I've read other romances, I've been like, oh, this guy is my next book boyfriend. Like, he's so hot. I'm so attracted to him. I never felt that way about Indigo. Not once.
Do you think it's because he doesn't have wings? Like, that's a serious question. Hi, book lovers. We are Ellen and Sarah, and this is Besties and Books, where we drink wine, share laughs, talk fantasy, and all the stories that steal our hearts. Today, we are going to review and rate the Descended series by Ingrid Adams. She's an Australian author, and this series is her first published work. The series will include 4 books in total, 3 of which have been released so far. So we are super excited to be reviewing books 1, 2, and 3 today, and want to thank Ingrid for providing us with an advanced reader copy of book 3. So let's get into book 1.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you as well. This is super exciting for us, and we also love to support indie authors. So to dedicate an entire episode to supporting an indie author, an Australian author, in this review of the 3 books, we're very excited. All right. So Descended is book 1 in the series, and it's a young adult, I want to call it fantasy, but it's more like magical realism, paranormal sort of genre with maybe a hint of fantasy in there. I don't know if you agree with that, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't call it strictly fantasy. But it's based in Manly, which is a suburb in Sydney, Australia, and it's based in the 1990s predominantly, and follows a very troubled teen Indigo Wolf and his love interest Cordelia. So Indigo battles with mental health throughout this book. He's got numerous demons to overcome, and this book really tackles tough issues. So we are talking things like drug abuse, alcoholism, underage drinking, body issues, sexual orientation, reincarnation. There are huge topics being dealt with in book 1. So I do have to say as well, if any of these topics are a bit of a trigger for you, it's always best just to check the trigger warnings before you go into this book. Whilst this was a YA, so young adult book, it probably for me was targeted more of an upper YA or even like adult, but that's just like a super brief synopsis of book 1. So what were your first impressions?
Well, I thought it was an interesting start. We see very early on some crazy paranormal activity. We see some life-sucking behaviors, literally sucking the life out of a nurse. So that sort of hits quite hard. And then we go back to your everyday high school teen sort of normal novel, and I was left thinking, oh, where is this all going? So that intrigued me. I loved that it's the full 90s nostalgia in Sydney. So we have references to the CD towers from the 90s, the 90210 and the Party of Five TV shows. That's sort of throughout the book, which I thought was quite cute. I really liked how Ingrid names each chapter is a song title from the 90s. That was a nice touch.
I didn't pick up on that. Yeah, okay.
It took me a while of getting through quite a few chapters before I realized, like, 1 or 2 of them I knew were songs, and I thought, hang on, is this a coincidence? And then I looked up some of the others, and no, they're all, as far as I know, they're all song titles from the 90s.
That's so fun. I love that. I love little touches like that to books.
Yeah.
I think that's super thoughtful.
And then obviously being an Aussie, reading all of the references to Ned Kelly and the yeah, nah, and nah, yeah sayings. Tits on a bull, I think, got a mention in there as well. So that was quite, I don't think I've ever read a book that was sort of partially fantasy, paranormal, but set in basically our hometown. So that was quite unique.
Yeah, that was really cool. I have to agree with you too. With that opening chapter, I was hooked. I thought, what a great opening chapter when she was getting the life sucked out of her by the nurse. Obviously, that's pretty shocking and you're straight into it. But I was like, oh, I want to know what's happening here. And then when it moved into the high school setting, there was no magic anymore. It was like, it's gone. There's nothing. And it was a bit jarring for me because I was like, oh, well, what's happening here? What's happening now? And also
jarring in a good way or in a bad way?
It might get further into my I guess, midway and impressions. I think if there were sprinkles of it throughout the entire first book, it would have been jarring in a good way. But because it just sort of, it was there in the first chapter and then we didn't really see it again for the rest of the book, I think until the very end from memory.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen more of that build up of the magic system, I think, throughout book one. I think there was a lot of history of the characters given in book one, and there was a lot of, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but there was a lot of character development that I thought wasn't quite going anywhere with some of the characters in book one.
Yeah, I thought for a debut novel, I was impressed by the writing, but I was questioning at times where it was all heading. Like, I couldn't even, until sort of getting maybe 3/4 through the book, I really wasn't sure where the plot was going. But I was still engrossed. Like, the emotional journey that Indy went on and his downward spiral in depression, I thought was very well handled and well written.
She did that really, really well.
Yeah, and his recovery sort of out of that and dealing with it, his ongoing struggle with it. Yeah, I thought, well done, Ingrid. Loved it.
Yeah, me too. And also what really shocked me at the beginning of the book, we try not to message each other ever about the books because we like to shock ourselves, but I think I remember messaging you about this. I was like, do you remember going to parties when we were like 13 years old with alcohol and sex and drugs, like as a 13-year-old? I don't remember any of that happening. Was that a thing of the 90s that I just missed?
I actually really struggled with the ages at the beginning, and I think I flicked back a good couple of times at the year references because I kept thinking, have we skipped a few years? Like, surely they're older than 13 and 14. And then no, for a lot of the book, they were 13 and 14. And I thought, oh man, I don't know why I couldn't get it out of my head, just because the behaviors and the conversations in my mind were not that of a 13 or 14-year-old. So I sort of got a bit fixated on that when I probably should have just put it to the side.
It was hard not to, though, because we were talking really dark topics for that age. If you were an adult, it wouldn't have been a problem. But when you're talking about having sex at 14, it's like I just found it a bit full on.
And in the library where anyone can come across you. What did you think of the characters? Did you find them relatable? I guess the main ones, the Indy and Cora.
Yeah, I liked Indigo a lot. I thought his character was good. I liked Robbie, and Robbie is Cordelia's brother. I liked his character. I liked Cordelia. I found her a bit, I don't know if boring is the right word, but just lacking maybe a bit of substance from her at times. But overall, like I quite liked the characters in the beginning. I just wish, my only criticism about, I guess, the characters is I thought there was a lot of backstory when they were super young that I don't think added to the plot at all. I think if the story had started when they were 17 and all these mental health issues came up around there. I suppose they needed to develop the Indy's relationship with Cordelia's family. Yes, and I totally understand that.
Maybe it could have been done as a flashback or a...
Well, I think all of that was fine. All of that development was fine. I enjoyed reading that, but for me it was the time jumps. So all of a sudden, Indigo would be going for a run at 5 a.m. in the morning, and then the next page would be 4 weeks later. And so like, oh, hang on, what's happening here? Or then all of a sudden it would say 1 year later. Or 2 years later. Like, we were doing these huge time jumps, and I just felt like if we got all that backstory and that build up of relationship with Indigo and Cordelia's family, say within the 12-month period, I think it would have still had that effect. That's just my...
Yeah, fair. What about the sort of the world building and what we did see of the magic system in book one?
I was super intrigued by the magic system. I've never read anything like it. I just wanted to know more, and I was like, when are we going to get more and more and more of this magic system? I thought it was really cool and unique. What about you?
One thing I couldn't quite figure out was, so we're introduced to these beings called discarnate, and then everyone has their own guardian who is also a discarnate. But then we do see at times later on where a human becomes a guardian. So I wasn't quite sure on like what's the flow. Like, do all humans at some point throughout their lives ascend to be a guardian? Or Is there a
I
flow
didn't pick
there?
up on that.
I think I'm jumping ahead, but we meet a character later called Jeddah, and he was a human, and then he later becomes another character's guardian. So
That's really interesting.
I sort of was thinking that guardians, that discarnates were, for lack of a better word, these heavenly beings, I suppose.
Yeah.
And that there's a subset of them whose role is to act as like a guardian or a guide for, and every human being has a guardian.
Yeah, it's like a guardian angel type situation. And I understood it as they were souls who weren't living, but their dedicated role was to be the guardian and guide someone else. But I didn't pick up on the Jeddah one. So they didn't die and then become a guardian? They were a human?
I think Jeddah did die.
Oh, okay.
And then he's come back as a guardian. So, but I'm not sure whether, do all humans, once they've gone through, because you obviously mentioned we talk through reincarnation. So once a human has gone through many reincarnated lives and they have presumably learnt and achieved all they need to, is the natural flow that they all become guardians to someone else, or is it just or is that a very rare occurrence and most of them just, I don't know, just continue to be reincarnated?
When I was reading it, I thought, like you said, so yeah, we are getting into reincarnation. So in this book, it explains how every single person has lived multiple lives. Their soul lives on. And when you die, you get to choose basically the circumstances of your next life. But when you come back and you're reincarnated as a new person, you don't remember making those decisions. And my impression was, like you said, when you go through all these lives and you learn what you need to learn and grow from those, then you can opt to become a guardian for someone else. But I think you're right, that wasn't quite fleshed out fully. So I don't actually know if that's correct.
And then what determines, I guess, what a human has to learn before they're able to sort of ascend past the reincarnation?
Yeah, good point. Not sure.
Anyway, but I thought it was fascinating. So my mind...
Yeah, I thought it was really cool.
I always want to know all the details. So I'm hoping that book 4 will flesh out some of these questions. But like you, I thought it was fresh and original. And yeah, I'm hoping we hear more in book 4.
Yeah. Well, midway through the book, Indigo leaves Australia. He moves to New York to live with his dad, and his sort of mental health spirals out of control. We also do have a time jump where he's 17 years old, and there's few things that happen. Yeah, I know. I was done with the 14-year-olds. There's a few things that happen here which we won't reveal because we forgot to say at the start of this episode that this will be completely spoiler free. But in terms of Indigo's relationships with his parents, like his dad and his mum, did you find that as brutal as I did?
Oh yeah. I found it heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I think one thing I felt very emotional and sad about is the fact that he obviously has a very disconnected relationship with his parents. He then has this one person in his life, Sarita, his nanny, who we learn very early on may not actually be what he thinks. And that sort of shatters, I think, that's the last remaining parental figure in his life sort of gets taken away from him. That. And that for me, I think I found that more sad than the dysfunction of his parents, because I think the parental dysfunction is always there and it's sad, but he has this lifeline the whole time at Sarita that at one point just gets a bit shaken up, and I thought I had a momentary, oh my gosh, he's got no one now. So I found that the saddest point, but yes, very messed up family situation.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I remember that. I that pulled on my heartstrings a lot when that event happened with Sarita. I was like, oh my God, like who has he got? This poor kid. Like he's still a kid. I know he's 17, but he's a kid.
And then we see him at one point, we see him bond with a sort of a companion in a hospital situation, and I loved that whole sequence.
That was great.
This is when I guess he's gone through a tough time in his life, and he's working on his depression, and he's trying to come back up to the real world, and I thought that was done really well, and he builds a beautiful relationship that is like maintained throughout the 3 books. It's not a key focus, but it was a nice touch.
Yeah, I loved that. I actually thought she did that really well, like the relationship building between the characters.
Yeah.
And sort of the found family that was built within the book as well. I thought that was really well done. What did you think of the ending without spoiling?
Do you know, I actually guessed the ending.
No, you didn't! Really?
Yeah. Like the endings of the next 2 books, there were definite elements I did not see coming at all. But I think because when you read just like the synopsis, it makes some comment about Renoir, who is this, I guess, the evil character in the series. So to me it was like, oh well, it's probably not going to be a surprise.
Yeah.
And then I just made an educated guess. So yeah, I actually guessed it.
I see how, just from what you said, how you guessed the ending. So for me, that shook me. So there was a few elements of this book that I struggled with, but the ending bumped it up half a star for me because I just did not see that coming at all. And I hadn't read the synopsis.
I
went
love
into this book totally blind.
I love it when you don't see the ending coming. That's the best.
Yeah. How did you feel about the pacing overall?
I think just because I got a little bit I felt like it was a little bit directionless in the middle. Like I think the pacing was fine for me, but it was the plot that let it down a little bit.
Yeah, I struggled with the pacing a lot. I think you got that impression
with
from
all the jumping
but
around.
Maybe it was more of a plot. Yeah, I really struggled, and
yeah,
also
because that didn't bother me at all. Like even when you were mentioning the jumping around, I was like, oh yeah, I guess it jumped around a bit.
Well, that's why it's so good to have two people review a book, right? Because we've got such even though we like the same style of book, we have different opinions on things. And the other thing, I am so sorry, Ingrid, but what I actually thoroughly disliked about this book, which does improve, I will preface this, there's a big change in books 2 and 3, but for book 1, the writing style was basically all third person and parts were rushed and then parts were dragged out. I didn't feel like I was in with the characters living the story. I didn't feel like I was in with the characters or a fly on the wall. I felt like someone was telling me the story. I felt like the story was being told to me rather than me being in the story, and I don't enjoy that writing style. Thankfully, that doesn't continue in books 2 and 3, but I struggled with that a lot in book 1.
Do you know what's funny? So book 1, I didn't pick up on that at all, but book 2... when I guess the relationship between Indigo and Cordelia intensifies, I struggled with aspects of the writing style then because I felt like their relationship should have been really emotional, and for me I think it missed an emotional element because I was being told how they feel about each other rather than just seeing it develop naturally. So yes, certainly in terms of their relationship in book 2 I noticed that, but book 1 I didn't notice it at all.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And it did continue, like I said, it got better in book 2. It did actually continue in book 2, but it wasn't for majority of the book. I think the writing got better and better and better as the books went on, and so it didn't bother me as much. But yeah, I don't like being told. I don't like feeling like I'm being told the story. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever.
No, it does, because that's how I felt about their sort of emotional journey, Corey and Indigo, was that I didn't feel like I was going on the ride with them. I was just being told they feel this, they feel this, they feel this. Oh, okay. But I didn't see it happening and evolving.
Yeah. Should we do a star rating? You ready?
Yes.
Should we do the 1, 2, 3, or are you just going to say it?
Yep.
Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
3.5
stars.
Oh!
Wow! That's huge! 3.5!
Yeah.
Wow. I have to admit, I toss up between 2.5 to 3. So all the elements that I loved were great, but because of that third person point of view, being told the story, that really impact my reading experience. Yeah. Otherwise, everything else I loved, but I just really struggled with that writing style. It just didn't hit for me in this book. In saying that, as I said, I'm going to say this 1,000 times, it got better. So whilst that seems like a poor rating, sometimes that happens with book 1 in a series for me, is it just doesn't land as well as the other books in the series. It is a shorter one, so if you struggle with that writing style, I implore you to continue because it is so worth it in the end.
So book 2, we're still set in the 1990s, and it now takes place sort of partially in Australia and partially in Arizona, where our main man Indigo has connected with some like-minded people and got some sort of found family members over there, and he's really started, at the end of book 1, he really started to explore his higher senses, which have given him some, I guess, additional skills that others do not have. So we follow Cordelia and Indigo as they navigate their relationships both with each other and with others, and they deal with the fallout from some key events in book 1, which we won't be able to reveal. We delve into some backstories of side characters. So Renenoir is the main evil character from book 1. So we learn a bit more about what's driven her over the years and where she's come from. We also delve into one of Indigo's good friends, Raph, who is like a father figure to Indigo, and he's based in Arizona. So we delve into his backstory. He also has higher senses, which have given him some additional powers. So we learn more about the different types of powers that people with higher senses demonstrate. So going through all that, we obviously learn more about the magic system. So Indigo and a number of his friends that have the higher senses, we see how it plays out with them developing their skills. We learn more about reincarnation, about souls finding each other, life after life. We also get introduced to a wider witch world, and there are good witches and there are bad witches. Renenoir is obviously from the bad witch bunch. There are some huge reveals in this book, just like book 1. There is some horrifically tragic moments, but then it's also interspersed with some humor and some joy. So, shall we move into your first impressions of book 2?
Yeah. So I think from memory, book 2 opens with a bit of a background dump on Renenoir and how she got to where she is today. And the only thing I would have changed about that was I would have loved to have seen a dual timeline with Indigo in book 1. So her development, how she got to Renenoir today, I would have liked to see that happen alongside Indigo as he grew in book 1.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
As a dual timeline. I think that could have made it like possibly a 5-star read for me if that had happened side by side. Still with that sort of big reveal or whatever at the end, that still could have worked, I think, with the dual timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think in terms of first impressions, as soon as I read that background dump of Renenoir, I was like, oh, this would have been so good as a dual timeline. But I loved hearing about her background and how she got to where she is. I thought that was so fascinating. I was drawn. It was tragic, but also kind of deserved. I don't know. I had mixed feelings about this.
Yeah, I thought the backstory was good. I also really liked how Ingrid up front in books 2, and she does it in 3 too, does a recap of the previous book in terms of the main characters. Just a couple of lines on the character so you're sort of reminded who they are, and then a favourite quote from them. I thought that was great, the favourite quote.
Yeah, that was really clever. I didn't pick up on the favourite quote part. I love that. I did appreciate the recaps, especially if, you know how books, they get released like a year or 2 apart.
Yeah, you wait 2 years between books to be released.
Yeah.
We'll need the recap when book 4 comes out.
Yeah. I actually don't know when book 4 is coming out. I haven't looked that up. Maybe she hasn't. I mean, book 3's only just come out, so I doubt she's done an announcement yet. How did you feel about the pacing?
I thought in books 2, I mean, in all 3 books actually, I felt like I was engaged, like I was keen to read. I didn't feel like there were like exciting and dull lulls in the book, but I also didn't experience that inability to put it down. You know, when you read, you're reading a book where I literally cannot even get out of bed. I cannot look after my children until I've got to the end of this chapter, or till I've got to the end of the book really, which for me is what makes a book 5-star, when you cannot put it down and then you finish and you go, oh my god, that changed my life. So I didn't get those vibes with any of the 3 books, but it was so unique, the magic system, sort of the settings, that I was engaged the whole way. I never felt like, oh, I don't actually want to read this right now. So it was, I had no problems with the pacing. I feel like you didn't say that you did.
I did. Just with the beginning. From the midway point, the pacing for the rest of the book and book 3 was spot on. Fantastic.
What happened at the
Wouldn't
beginning
change
of
a
book
thing.
2 with the pacing?
It went from this, I think, background dump of Renenoir, and then there was some sort of lull, and then we were just hearing more backstory, I think, of the other side characters from memory. Nothing, there was just no reveals. I just felt like we got this big shock of Renenoir, and then it sort of just went back into everyday life without any sort of plot development. It was more character building, which we needed, but I felt like just the beginning just needed a little sprinkle of something. But then from the midway point, there's a huge tragedy midway in book 2, which also I did not see coming. And from then on, I was like, oh my god, god. This
Yeah,
is
I
like,
agree.
I want to know what happens.
I mean, there's two key events, would you say, where
Yeah.
things almost just like everything falls apart sort of thing almost.
Yeah.
And I loved those scenes.
It was so good. And
Especially-
midway in the book as well.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
And I thought there's one particular fight scene where she tells it from different perspectives and the chapters sort of jump around in time, like 15 minutes behind from this one perspective and then 5 minutes behind. And often I've read that in sort of those fight scenarios where there's so much going on and there's so many people, and it's often fallen flat for me. But I actually thought it was done really well.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Did you like it though? Because
My-
you weren't saying that you liked the jumping back and forth.
No, I didn't. Jumping back and forth. I'm sorry. I'm
Ever?
sorry. It's
you don't
just
like it ever?
no.
What about the fight
I don't mind
scenes from all the different perspectives? Did you like that?
Like, I don't mind getting a backstory of someone. Like, we're going back in time, say 10, 20 years ago, and we get the backstory. I think that is so helpful sometimes, and then it goes back to present day. But it's the constant time jumps or frequent time jumps within one chapter or across multiple chapters rather than just one section of the book. What was the other part of your question?
Oh, and the different perspectives. Like in the one fight scene, they tell.
I
it
like
from
multiple
different characters.
perspectives.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I like multi-point of views. I love multiple point of views in any book. I actually feel like the exception to that rule is Fourth Wing, because we don't get a lot of Zayden's point of view, and that totally unrelated to this, but I prefer dual point of view or multiple points of view.
Yeah. One thing I loved about this book was the ramp up in terms of A, the magic system, but B, the witch cove. We learn there's various witch covens and the politics and the fighting, and there's obviously sort of every coven and every witch leader wants to be have the title of witch queen.
Is it coven or coven, by the way?
Oh, I don't know. I
think it's coven. I think it's coven.
Coven.
Yeah, I think it's coven. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's pronounced coven.
Whatever.
Anyway, sorry.
Coven.
Yeah.
I could have had a lot more on sort of the infight, everyone learning to harness their powers and their skills and fighting and politics. I would have had a lot more of that. It actually reminded me, did you ever watch the TV show Heroes?
No. But I heard a lot about it. That's with Hayden Panettiere in it, right?
Yes. So it sort of reminded me of that TV series where there's a lot of like just general humans start evolving and developing powers out of nowhere. I guess a little bit like X-Men. And this book, like book 2 and 3, felt a little bit more like that because new characters keep popping up and they've got powers now and they've got powers and everyone's getting powers.
Yeah, that's what I was surprised. I was like, oh, everyone's getting powers now. I remember having that thought.
At one point I thought, how is there no public information on this, but everyone seems to have powers? Everyone in the circle has powers. Is it contagious? Like, what determines who gets a power?
Contagious. Yeah, that's true. That's not explained.
The other thing that sort of confused me was the terminology, like the witch versus warlock versus akasha. And in the end, I think witch just refers to anyone with powers, and then the warlocks are the evil and the akasha is the good.
I took it as that, yeah.
Except that later on in book
I was
3,
confused between akasha and witch.
Yeah, because then later on in book 3, they refer to like good characters as being witches.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that part.
So then I was like, that sort of breaks my theory. But anyway, that wasn't a deal breaker. I just thought, this is confusing.
Yeah. How did you feel about the new characters like Aurora and Nash and Sasha, Dawn?
What do you
Reggie,
say about that? Dawn. I like them. I felt like when they all introduced towards 3/4 of the way through book 1, and for me when they came into book 1, that's really when I could sort of get a sense for where this was going. Like, oh, okay, we've got a group of people that they're all going to have powers and they're all keen on the greater good, and there's a bit more of like a wider world just outside, I suppose, Indigo's love for Cora. And then in book 2 when they come to Australia and they help Indigo in his fight against Renenoir, and they sort of help some additional characters harness their powers. I thought she did that well. I thought creating the found family relationships was like well done. There was some humor in there. There was some touching moments. I always like a found family relationship.
I love found
I don't know
family.
why.
It's one of my favourite tropes.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I thought it was really well done as well. Also, how did you feel about the tension between Cora and Indigo by about midway in book 2?
The
like
tension.
the chemistry
between
them.
Like I was saying when we were talking about book 1, I thought they were a super cute couple. I just didn't feel like I was probably as emotionally invested as I think we were supposed to be from reading. And I can't remember if it's actually book 2 or book 3, but at one point I did get a little bit over just hearing how much they loved each other. And also hearing, I thought there was...
They couldn't spend 2 weeks apart.
Oh, yeah. I was like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
And it wasn't even mentioned once. It was like over and over and over again how devastated they were to spend 2 weeks apart. And I was like, oh, come on, guys.
The other thing I thought was funny was just how, I meant to keep track of it, just how many times it was mentioned that Indigo was perfect. Like he was, he's the perfect student. He's perfect at playing music. He's perfect at, I don't know, doing his like jiu-jitsu fighting.
Perfect hair.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, we get it. He's perfect, right? He's perfect. So yeah, I had no problems with their relationship. I was just a bit like, oh, okay, let's get away from, like, I'm really hoping book 4 moves well away from like their relationship, and
we don't need to build it anymore, right?
Yeah, focuses on the wider world, the witch covens, and the battle for the title of Witch Queen. That's what I'm interested in.
I totally agree. When I've read other romances, I've been like, oh, this guy's my next book boyfriend. Like, he's so hot. I'm so attracted to him. I never felt that way about Indigo. Not once.
Do you think it's because he doesn't have wings? Like, that's a serious question.
Well, Zayn doesn't have wings. He has shadow powers though, so maybe that makes sense. True.
Yeah, but I do think for me, like, I would have been, I guess, in Fourth Wing
and doesn't have wings.
But some other books that have the same like power elements. I love getting really into the powers and seeing what they can do and seeing them develop.
Yeah, me too.
And we did get into that sort of more in, books 2 and 3 a little bit, but I think I would have liked to see that a bit more of a like powerful and exciting part of both of the books.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, there's a scene midway through the book in book 2 where Indigo basically cuts down Sian's father when he is making some pretty horrible comments about Robbie's sexual orientation.
Oh, yeah.
That was epic. When Indigo cut Sian's father down, that was the first time where I was like, damn, that was pretty hot. Like, that was fantastic. I loved that. Otherwise, I kept picturing him as like a 14-year-old. I couldn't do it.
Keep in mind that was their Year 12 formal, wasn't it? So he's not exactly...
Oh, yeah, he's
then.
pretty young
He's
still, yeah.
Still pretty young.
Yeah.
I found that whole scene very awkward. And then Sian afterwards, obviously, completely embarrassed. Like, I felt bad for her. Oh, yeah, the whole thing was just like, ooh.
Yeah.
Like Ingrid said at the beginning of her, I think she said it in the sort of the preface to the book, she's not shying away from, some of the awkward conversations and topics that occurred in the 90s. Wasn't as politically correct.
But still, it was really well done. So this happened in Trial of the Sun Queen that we were talking about before, was there was a few things that were said there that were politically incorrect or just like so out of touch and outdated, particularly to do with women. Whereas that still happened in this book, but it was immediately corrected. Like, Indigo cut down Cheyenne's father and was like, you can't.
Yeah, true.
Like, what are you talking about? You can't say that. There was at no point where the author was like, that kind of language is acceptable, even though it happened in that time period. It still wasn't okay. Yeah. And I loved that. What did you think of the ending, quickly?
So I did not guess this ending. I guess it wasn't like a huge reveal.
I didn't understand it. I was like, okay, who cares?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't
I was the same.
Yeah. Unlike book 3, which we'll get to, there were some things there that I was like...
Yes. And look, the ending of book 2 relates to some of the big reveals in book 3. So looking back on it, I'm like, whoa, that ending. But at the time, I was like, Oh, okay, cool.
Agreed.
Yeah. Are you ready to give a star rating?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3. 3.5.
3.6. Oh, we're closer.
Ooh, that's more close. That's close. Yeah, I have to admit, I sort of float between 3 to 3.5 stars just because there was still that little bit of third point of view and time jumps a little bit in this book, but it was much, 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 much better. So sort of 3.5. I'm gonna say 3.5.
Cool.
All right. Book three.
So book 3 continues following our two main characters, Indigo and Cordelia. At the start of the book, Cordelia is back in Australia and Indigo is in Arizona. So they have a few weeks apart and they are in major struggle town. They cannot pull their apart.
It's 2 weeks, guys.
Yeah. Fate is a key theme throughout this book. So the notion of whether there's certain things in life which are predestined or whether you can, I guess, break the cycle and alter your fate. Indigo makes a decision for both of them in an attempt to thwart what he believes their fate is, but he decides to keep it from Cordelia, and she obviously finds out at some point and is not very impressed. Raph is busy on a personal mission for a lot of the book, which is to do with the big reveal at the end of book 2, but his path does eventually merge back with Indigo and the team and their found family. Renenoir is still there in the background. She's descending further into darkness. She participates in some fairly horrific acts, so definitely not a fan of Renenoir. She has an obsession. She's had an obsession with Indigo the entire series. She wants him for herself. She can sense that he has some serious powers, and she is also angling to be the Witch Queen. So Indigo and his found family, they're aware of this, and so they're on edge a lot of the book, just waiting to see what Renenoir might do next. So again, the book is filled with some major plot twists.
Heaps.
There's very large reveals at the end, which I did not see coming. Plenty of highs and lows throughout the book. So one thing I'll say for first impressions is I think as the books have progressed, I'd say the plot complexity has certainly increased. Like book 1, it was a much simpler, sort of only focusing on one or two characters. Very little in terms of magic system. Like as the books have gone on, we're bringing in more characters, there's more reveals, there's more twists. It's just getting a little bit more exciting each book.
I loved the beginning of this book. It was explosive. Like that first chapter, it might have been first couple of chapters, I was like, what is going on? I was hooked. The writing style had completely changed. It wasn't third person anymore. It was completely first person. I was in the story. Loved the beginning of book 3.
Yeah, I agree.
Except for them going on about the 2 weeks being apart.
Agreed. Yeah.
That was annoying.
Yeah. Come on, we don't need to know how perfect either of you are. Skip.
And also, Indigo was coddling and being a bit overprotective of Cordelia at this point.
Oh, completely. Yeah. The decision he makes on their behalf as to how he's going to thwart fate, I was like, yeah, sorry, dude.
Not okay.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And then I lost a lot of respect for him when she sort of reveals a secret to Indigo, maybe halfway through the book, and he completely and utterly flips out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you asshole. Which I think that's the intent. We're supposed to feel like that momentarily before he gets back on track.
I liked how quick the recovery was for that, actually. But also in the beginning of book 3, we get to know 2 additional characters, Reggie and Skeet, a bit more. How did you feel about that?
Oh my gosh. Well, obviously I don't like either of them, but Reggie, Skeet's obviously like a scumbag and like a bit of an ass, but she was worse. I thought, I'm very intrigued to read what will happen with her in book 2, because I think, oh my God, I almost don't want her to have a redemption arc. Like, I just want her to get destroyed. That's how much I dislike her.
I could not believe it. I mean, we don't get to hear her backstory, but from the little that we do know, she has an amazing family relationship, and she is horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible to her mother. Cannot stand her. But I still enjoyed. I think that did add to the plot. Like I had like a love-hate relationship with hearing their story, because I kept thinking she couldn't be this horrible, and I kept waiting for her to change.
Agreed.
And it never happened.
I agree.
And so I liked being surprised.
Yeah. I think it was a good addition as a sort of some other side characters that aren't part of the happy found family unit. It was good having a bit of some other people to hate on. What about Robbie? Because book 1 and 2, Robbie's quite cute. He's sort of a bit of like the comic relief. He's really sweet. He's a bit. You get frustrated at him in book 2 because he does a few sort of useless things that end up. I guess others are affected by his sort of vagueness, but you put it down to, he's just a bit vague. But book 3, you really see, he's cute, endearing, just descends into, he just grated on me. He was not reliable. He was just all about himself. He was selfish. He was nasty, and he just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I wanted to shake him. Like, he drove me insane at times.
Yeah.
But then I really, really tried to relate to him and everything that he was going through, given some of the big things that happen in book 2. And even his inner dialogue talks about that. And that's why he's acting the way that he is because of those events in book 2. So I do try and relate to that. But there's only so much patience.
Yeah, I very quickly lost all sympathy for him.
Yeah, okay. I haven't quite lost it all, except the ending, I think, of book 3. It's hard to keep him in a positive light at this point, put it that way.
Yeah. So I'm super keen to read what happens to his character in book 4.
Yeah.
Like, I think it could go a few ways, and I have no expectation of which way it's going to go. So that's quite exciting. I love not being able to predict where things are heading.
Yeah, me too. This book was done so well with that. No, I didn't predict anything that happened in this book at all. Yeah.
Back to the magic system. One thing I did think was interesting that book 3 draws out that book 1 and 2 doesn't, is again the blend of normal life with fantasy in the magic system. So Ingrid talks through characters that have autism. It's actually they're actually folk with higher senses and abilities, and it's because they have extra powers. So there's some characters with autism that can sort of speak mind to mind and have other gifts. And I thought that was quite an interesting take on, like, they have their higher senses are so developed that when it manifests, you know, they may not be able to speak like you and I do, but they speak mind to mind, and they have other gifts. I thought she did that very well.
It reminds me too, one of my colleagues, she has I think it's her daughter, not her son. I think her daughter has Down syndrome, and when she was telling me about it, she didn't describe her as having an extra chromosome. She's described her as having an extra power. Like an extra innocence, and knowing that we don't understand her. It's our problem that we don't understand. She's just so extraordinary, and I loved that. I thought it nearly brought tears to my eyes. I was like, what a special way of thinking, and I just love it.
Yeah, I agree.
So midway through the book, there are some mad reveals. Huge reveals. Did you see those coming?
Oh, yeah, I did not see that coming. I also didn't see coming, I guess, more on like his ancestry side of things. There's some dark people, I suppose, in his history. That shocked me. Yes, the Charlie person, that also shocked me. In a good way. I thought, I'm loving this.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I was really enjoying the book by this point. And then how did you feel about the ending?
Oh, so there's a big reveal there with, I guess, Indigo and some members of his family. When I read that, I was like, what? There's some tragedy that befalls, like, Indigo's found family. That had me feeling very emotional. And then Robbie, there's a big reveal with Robbie too, which just made me ready to poke him in the eyeball. Did you predict any of them?
I mean, like you, I sort of got a bit wary of Balthazar. With what happens with Raph and his family, I had a guess about what was going to happen, but I was totally off.
Yeah.
So everything shocked me. There wasn't one thing that...
And I think the way she wrote it was quite good, because I wonder if we were suspecting the same person. Because the way it was written, I was expecting a certain someone to walk in with the bag, and I was like, oh, okay, that's going to connect it all together. And then when it was completely a different person, that threw me. So I love that surprise.
Also, with the ending of book 3, how she tied in real world events like the Bali bombings and the Twin Towers and stuff.
I thought that was interesting. When we were getting towards the end, when they mentioned the names of the pubs they were going to, I didn't think of the Bali bombing, but the name of the pub, I thought, like, I feel like if I'd sat down and thought about it, I would have guessed what was about to happen.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree.
But in the moment of
the
reading
name sounded familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh my God. So, should we rate it?
Yep.
You ready? 1, 2, 3.
4.5.
Oh, interesting.
You've overtaken me.
What the hell? How random. Well, for me, the writing style completely changed and I loved the reveals.
Yeah.
I don't know what more I can say. It wasn't 5 stars because it was a bit long. There was a few things in there that I didn't love, and I didn't just get that, oh my God, this is a 5-star feeling, can't put it down. I must read it at all times, like you were saying before. So yeah, it was, 4.5. I'm going to say 4.5 for me.
Which probably gives us about an average of 4 between us across the whole series.
Yeah. I highly, highly, highly recommend this series. And if you have a similar experience that I did in book 1, continue through. It is so worth it.
Definitely.
Any other things to add?
Do you know, I do have one comment that I didn't quite grasp the point of it. Was this discarnate character Micah? Like, what is his...
Oh, yeah.
What's his purpose? Is he basically the head of the discarnates? Is he like the god figure?
Yeah.
He is.
That's how I see it. Yeah. I see him as like almighty God, basically.
Because what I couldn't quite figure out is why does he care? Why does he care about... coming down and having little chats to the humans.
Yeah. But I presume he wants the good timeline to happen. Like, they're his people. Like, you know how, I guess in Christianity...
Never said. That's never...
No,
I feel like there needed to be an overarching statement of, like, my role as the leader of the discarnates is etc., etc. I need to keep the timeline healthy or something. I just felt like there was a bit of a disconnect there, which hopefully will be explained in book 4.
I agree with that. Overall, like we said, we see this as a 4-star read. Highly recommend this series, and I'd say we're pretty excited for book 4 whenever that comes out.
Yeah, let us know, Ingrid.
Yeah. Who would you recommend the series for?
Ooh, a good question. I mean, I think anyone that enjoys a little bit of fantasy and is Australian will at least appreciate the Sydney settings. Like, I actually really love that. Anyone that is keen on the notion of like soulmates or reincarnation, obviously the sort of the powers beyond comprehension, would probably enjoy it.
Unique magic system. Yeah.
If you enjoyed the TV show Heroes, I think you would enjoy it.
Totally agree. Also, if you're into like chakras and reincarnation, like you said, and sort of that spiritual afterworld, I guess that kind of falls into that paranormal genre. Fantastic read. Really, really, really great read. Yeah, it was really fun. Loved it. So that's a wrap from us today, besties. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment down below, and hit the notification bells so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. Until next time.
Bye.